In 1998, Aiwa was the #1 brand in Japan in 3 different product categories at once. 10 years later, the name was gone. Everyone assumes cheap competition killed it. It didn't. Sony did, on purpose, in slow motion. Over 6 years, Aiwa was founded in 1951. By 1998, it was Japan's #1 brand in mini component stereos, #1 in CD radio cassette players, and #1 in headphone stereos, all at the same time, with over 300 billion yen in annual sales. And here's what most people outside Japan never knew. In the 1990s, Aiwa's brand was actually stronger than Sony's in parts of Europe and the Middle East. This is important. Remember that international brand value is about to be thrown away. By the early 2000s, Aiwa had fallen behind on digital technology, and Sony fully absorbed the company, first through a share exchange in October 2002, then a full merger that December. Aiwa ceased to exist as a company. But Sony didn't let the brand die quietly. On January 8, 2003, Sony held a press event and announced Aiwa would be relaunched as a youth-focused, PC-centric brand, with a brand new logo. This was framed as a revival, not a shutdown. Here's the uncomfortable part. It wasn't. Within 3 years, new product development had stopped entirely. Let's look at what a detailed Japanese retrospective on the Aiwa brand actually says about what happened inside Sony, not the simplified Western version. One long-running Japanese archive dedicated to Aiwa's history describes the gap between Sony's stated strategy and its actual execution bluntly. What was promised didn't match what was delivered. And on the international brand value Aiwa had spent decades building in Europe and the Middle East, the same source uses a sharp phrase. Sony didn't neglect it. Sony abruptly discarded it. That's not a foreign analyst's theory. That's a Japanese source describing a Japanese company's own decision. So here's the real timeline. October 2002, the company is absorbed. January 2003, Sony promises a revival. January 2005, just 2 years later, new product development quietly ends. By 2007, Aiwa products stopped being sold outside Japan entirely. And on May 14, 2008, Sony makes it official. The Aiwa brand is discontinued. 6 years. Not a sudden collapse. A slow wind down, dressed up publicly as a relaunch that never actually happened. So, when people say cheap Asian competition killed Aiwa, they're skipping the part where Aiwa was still the #1 brand in 3 categories, with genuine international brand equity Sony itself didn't have in some markets. The real story isn't a company that got outcompeted. It's a company that got absorbed by a bigger rival, publicly promised a second life, and then had that promise quietly abandoned over 6 years, while the one asset that might have saved it, its overseas brand value, got thrown away on purpose. The Aiwa name didn't vanish overnight. It was allowed to die slowly by the company that said it was saving it. 2 very different ways for a great Japanese brand to disappear. One buried under a bank takeover, one quietly starved by its own parent company. If you want the next one, the kind of Japanese business history that goes past the headlines, subscribe.